Meanwhile, on the comic box, I've been reading and watching. Let's get into it, shall we? Comics. Hello and welcome to issue 66 of the Comic Box, part of the Geek to Geek podcast network. I am Rob, your friendly neighborhood comic geek, and this week we are all talking reviews for once. We have had a bunch of side topics for a while, and I wanted to come back and just really dive into some of the things I have been reading and watching. But first, the weekly geekery, which is kind of tied into all of the reviews. But I did other things besides just sit in a corner and read comics by myself. I went to the pub crawl that must not be named, which is I think it's the third year or something they've done it. It is now an annual Harry Potter pub crawl put on here in the Twin Cities. I went in my Mad Eye Moody costume, and I won first place in the costume contest. It was really cool. They had a number of bars that were participating. We only went to two of them. The one that has a room sort of decked out like the Great Hall, and they were selling wands and brooms and stuff, and we're playing Harry Potter up on the wall with a big projector. And then we went to the other one that had the stage where they did the costume contest, because I was with a costume group, and their costumes, seriously, go to Facebook and look up the Marauders MN. Their costumes are so much better than mine. But there was only one other Mad Eye Moody that I saw, who, to be fair, also had a pretty good costume. It was like these, not underground, what is it? Sort of anonymous, hidden costume judges that would walk around and sort of sneak you this little gold box, and inside was a snitch with a little piece of paper saying, be at the stage at 10:15 for the costume contest. So I kept getting good comments as I was walking around, and people really liked it. And then it's hard to describe, really. I've been on stage in front of crowds and stuff, but to have, 15 or 17 of us up there, and people are slowly walking up and getting applause, and they might do something a little silly. And then I put on my grumpiest face, and I stomp out there, and I have the big walking stick and that I made to look like Moody's and the whole thing. And I step out there, and the place just went nuts. And it is really the best feeling in the world, I think, to have a silly, nerdy, geeky choice that you've made validated like that. And like I said last week, I went and I watched Goblet of Fire to prepare, so I grabbed the microphone and did sort of the intro, Alistair Moody, former armor minister for malcontent, yet I did my little, I'm here because Dumbledore asked me goodbye, the end, and handed the mic back, and the place, again, just absolutely exploded. So I didn't want first place. It felt great, but first place just won, alcohol at the bar, and I don't really go to downtown Minneapolis to drink, so having a VIP bottle service doesn't really do a whole lot for me. And second place was a custom Harry Potter jersey, so that would have been nicer. But it's okay. Like I said, it was an absolute blast. I got the biggest applause of everybody, and it's not even a humble brag. I will straight out brag about it. It was awesome, and I was humbled to have had the chance to brag about it. As far as the television, I did not watch The Tick. Again, I know, I totally need to do it. I had spent 2 episodes talking to Fletch about it, and I still haven't. But that is because, and I said this last week, I started Season 7 of The Walking Dead, which I binged and finished. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. The wife and I also started watching The Office, or she saw the first episode or 2 on her own. And so we're kind of jumping back and forth between that and Parks and Rec. Parks and Rec, I think, still is always going to be sort of her favorite, especially out of the two. And I think part of that is because it's sort of like going backwards if you start with Parks and Rec and then go back to The Office, because The Office was sort of trying things that were then sort of perfected in Parks and Rec, if that makes sense. So we'll see how far we get into it. Season 1 was really short, so we're currently on Season 2. We just finished the Dundies episode. So yeah, all that Pam and Jim. Will they, won't they? That's a throw over to Tea Time, which I haven't listened to their episode yet. But I know their episode from last week or this past week, depending on when you listen to this, was about will they, won't they relationships. So I wonder if they mention Pam and Jim. Next up, we have our retractions, apologies, and corrections. Last week, I said that I had the suggestion to talk about going from comics to adaptations with Fletch, and that I had pitched some ideas and I had gotten those notes off of Slack. But I was corrected the other night that it was not my idea pitching it to Slack. It was not the idea of people on Slack. It was, in fact, the wife's recommendation. That I was talking to her, wondering aloud what I was going to do with the podcast and with Fletch, and that she brought that up as an idea, and I loved it. And then apparently I loved it so much that I forgot to mention that it was the wife's. But we are a unit, she and I, so basically it's my idea, right? Right? I hope I take long enough to edit this that my wife still makes the apple crisp she said she was going to be making from the apple she picked with her friend. Because otherwise I'm not getting that apple crisp. And I love my wife's apple crisp. And I feel like there was something else that I was supposed to correct or retract or something as well from last week. And I was thinking about it while I was reading the note about the adaptation, but now I don't remember it all. So if I said something wrong previously, I apologize, but we're going to move on by, let's take a commercial break. Why the heck not? We'll be back.
I'm Void.
And I'm Beej.
And together, we're the Geek to Geek podcast. Well, we make it. It is kind of us, but I guess it's separate.
Every week, we pick a topic from geek or digital culture and chat about it for a while.
And you're invited. We talk about books and movies, games, comics, the internet.
Or really whatever we feel like.
Yeah, that too.
So look for the Geek to Geek podcast on iTunes.
Or wherever your podcasts are sold. Or downloaded. Or whatever.
Hi, my name is Joe Hogan, and I'm a geek. And if you're currently listening to this, there's a good chance you're a geek too. So check out my podcast, Geektitude. Each week, I talk with somebody about their geek aptitude. Sometimes I talk to people in a geeky profession. Sometimes it's someone doing something really cool with their geekiness. Often it's another geeky podcaster. But it's always someone who wants to share their inner geek. So join me each week as we come together to geek out about all the geeky stuff we love. And remember, this week, keep it geek.
And we are back. Yes, indeedy, we are part of the Geek to Geek podcast network. Don't you know? I hope you guys are listening to all the other shows. The Geek to Geek podcast had a really good one most recently, as from when there's going to be a new episode out by the time you guys hear this probably. But Void had his wife on, which was awesome. And they talked about knitting and very briefly about crocheting. And they make a joke about hookers, which is entertaining. And specifically, Void's wife says that he would make a really good serial killer, which I think is interesting because my wife has always said that I would make an excellent cult leader. So now we just need to figure out what Joe and BJ's spouses think they would do well as, and we can start our own evil cabal group. And that's not to say that Katie and Chelsea can't join in and be evil with us. I'm just very curious to hear what everybody's spouse is. So I suppose that's fair. So Chelsea's husband as well. We can see what evil criminal we would all be best as comic book criminals. For Liam, I don't know. Dr. Ray is already a supervillain. Fletch would never be a supervillain. He's Batman. Liam, I feel like... Honestly, Liam's going to be one of those guys that shows up in a giant animal costume and gets beaten very easily. And that's fine because he won't listen to this. But I think that totally suits him of what kind of villain he would be. I can't see him being a serial killer or a cult leader or, I don't know, tax fraud. Maybe tax evasion? I don't know. All right. Anyway, we would love it if you guys would leave us reviews. We have 21 currently. Thank you to the people who have left it. Oh, I have that. Hold on. Thank you to Ralkomaniac, Director 60, and Bama Shocks for your recent reviews on iTunes. They mean the world to us, and we kind of need them. They are the fuel that keeps us going and brings new listeners in, which grows our community. So thank you for that. Now, let's get into some news. That might have been too long. News! And I have all sorts of news for you guys. Let's start with Marvel Comics. Couple characters are coming back. As we know, they're kicking off this Marvel Legacy thing. Now that Secret Empire is done, Secret Empire is all that stuff where Captain America is evil and was in Hydra. Shock! It's all back to normal now, more or less. But there are a couple things, so spoilers in 3, 2, and 1. Jean Grey, the original Jean Grey, is coming back, and apparently she's been dead since 2003. I had absolutely no idea. Like, I guess I knew she was dead, and now they have, like, the young Jean Grey from the past or something running around, but I didn't realize it's actually been that long. So apparently, a character who's been dead in the comic books for 14 years is finally coming back. So they're doing a miniseries on that. And then apparently the first issue of Marvel Legacy teases the return of Wolverine, who has also been dead for a couple years now, replaced by the all-new Wolverine, which was X-23, Wolverine's female clone, the little character you saw if you watched the Logan film, who is now an adult in the comic books, as well as Old Man Logan, which is the storyline that Logan was kind of, sort of, in spirit adapted from like an alternate future. So yes, because it's X-Men comics and it's all one big crazy soap opera, that is what happened there. But Captain America is back as regular Captain America. Falcon is going to put down the shield, so that is yet another successor to the shield that has to go away now because we need to get back into doing the other Marvel movies, which means our comic book characters need to be the same. So we're just going to go ahead and make Steve Rogers Captain America again. Apparently they did this really nice sort of send-off of Falcon as Captain America where he serves in World War II, goes back in time, something. I don't know. I didn't read the story. But it is all part of this Marvel Legacy thing, which is basically Marvel's version of DC Rebirth, where they're trying to sort of bring everything back to one. Everybody goes back to their, in this case, they're actually going back to original numbering as well, which is insane. But I think they're going to try and make the Marvel Comics universe more recognizable to new readers that might be coming off of all the movies, which is kind of a regular practice. They'll do these big sweeping changes in comics and then a new movie comes along and they need to put the comics back or change them to look more like the movies. Like when the X-Men comics, they were suddenly all wearing black leather after the first movie, that sort of thing. So expect to see a bunch of stuff return. I guess the first issue of Marvel Legacy #1 or whatever is already out. Tease the Wolverine thing. Most of it, I think, or part of it, is written by Jason Aaron, the guy who we like here on this podcast. He writes the Thor books, has written a whole bunch of other stuff for Marvel in the past. It seems like he's sort of the one leading the charge, kind of the way Jeff Johns was sort of leading DC Rebirth. And in that sense, I'm okay, because I like Jason Aaron's stuff. I think he knows how to have fun, as well as write a good story. But when it comes to sort of bringing everything back to normal, the Avengers comic, the Uncanny Avengers comic, and US Avengers are all going to merge into one Avengers book in January, and then they're going to ship that thing weekly. Normally, comic books come out once a month. I don't know what that's going to cost if they're doing that. So if you're an Avengers fan and you want Avengers comics, I apologize. They are clearly trying to get people on the hook here, except, like I said, they're going to original numbering. So the beginning of this new weekly thing they're doing is issue 675. So it is not a #1 issue to help people jump on. So yay, I guess. I don't read a ton of Marvel books that aren't Thor right now. I'm trying to think if there's actually any other Marvel books that I'm actually reading on the regular. I guess I jump on All New Wolverine every once in a while. But that's pretty much it. I think. I'm probably wrong. Anyway, let's do some Marvel TV. There's a new Punisher trailer. I mentioned this last week. Link is in the show notes, or you can just go to YouTube and search it. They've done a couple little teasers. One where it was like some headcam video of him hunting down people. There's a lot to unpack in this trailer, but the big thing for me, because it ties into what we talked about last week, is it seems like they are changing the origin of the Punisher, where his family wasn't gunned down in the park in the middle of a mob shootout, which is the reason that Frank Castle goes to war against the mob, and it's a never-ending war. It seems like his family is being killed by the members of a former Black Ops CIA squad that Frank Castle was a part of. So it's like I don't know, revenge for him quitting or something. That's not really explained. The show seems to be based around Frank Castle, who is presumed dead, going back and taking out the other members of this Black Ops squad that he was a part of for the CIA because they're responsible for the death of his family. I don't know that I'm a big fan of that decision because just like last week when we were talking about, the reveal that the Joker killed Batman's parents, when you have that type of a character who's supposed to have an open-ended origin, if I can call it that. The person who killed Uncle Ben in the end was a random hood, and that was the lesson Spider-Man needed to learn. Batman's folks were gunned down by a guy who may have just needed money to go get a bite to eat or whatever. It was a random crime. Again, Batman, then he's a street-level hero trying to stop muggings. With the Punisher, specifically, it's the mob, so he can go after the mob and organized crime rather than the CIA? A, that seems weird, and B, by giving him one particular target or 5 guys or whatever it is who are responsible for the death of his family, that means that he can kill them and his story is done. Whereas with the mob, it goes on because crime just keeps rejuvenating and all he can really do is try and stamp it down for a short period of time by taking out leadership or grunts or whatever. It does still seem like it's going to be a good show, so I am looking forward to it. Plus, Micro! At the end of Daredevil Season 2, he grabs a CD that says Micro on it. That is a character in the Punisher comic book who, for a time, made weapons for Frank Castle and helped him in his war against the mob. So I look forward to seeing how that pans out in the show. As for Marvel movie news, here's a breakdown of all of the X-Men stuff coming our way, because there's a lot of it. First, there is the show Gifted on Fox, which premieres October 2nd. Then New Mutants comes in April 2018, which reportedly is going to have a horror vibe, which I am totally down for. I like that the X franchise is waking up and is willing to take on sort of different genres with their movies. Then Deadpool 2 shows up in June of 2018, just a couple months later, and we know that's going to have Cable in it as well. And then X-Men Dark Phoenix is in November of 2018. So that is 3 X-Men related films in 1 year, 1 calendar year. Otherwise, October, the TV show. Yeah. And then X-Force is currently in development, but I believe they have a director, and they're saying that it's going to be the team featuring both Deadpool and Cable. So I guess we know neither of them die in Deadpool 2. Although I guess Cable could because time travel is kind of his thing. And is going to be like a Black Ops, Kill Squad, hopefully, type of thing. Kind of like the X-Force run in like the mid-2000s. And then Deadpool 3 is supposedly already in development because they know Deadpool 2 is going to make crazy money. And then there's Gambit, which is technically in development somewhere as well. But just that idea of 2018, this next year coming up, we're getting 3 X-Men related movies. That feels kind of like a lot. Like we get maybe 2 Marvel movies and a Netflix show, I guess, from Marvel. And then whatever they do on TV stuff of Agents and S.H.I.E.L.D. plugging along and Inhumans, which I read somewhere might not actually be airing on television. I didn't double check that before I started recording here. That wasn't one of my main news stories. I don't know. Lots of X-Men. Let me know your guys' thoughts because I'm totally curious if you guys are hyped for this. I don't really care about Dark Phoenix. I'm obviously excited for Deadpool 2. New Mutants. I love that they're making a horror film, with the X-Men characters in it. I have no idea if it's going to be good or not because who knows. Let's go to DC Comics. Batman Day. It was Batman Day this past week. DC mainly celebrated 25 years of Harley Quinn, and thus 25 years of Batman the Animated Series with it. There is a special comic book issue out there that is just celebrating the 25th anniversary of Harley Quinn. It's got a bunch of different short stories in it, including one by Paul Dini, who co-created the character, and one that's done by the current team that's heading up the Harley Quinn comics, so it might be a good choice, one big solo issue for you to pick up if you're sort of interested to see how the character is being treated right now versus, some other stories by other creators. Dark Knight's Metal, this was the one that Fletch suggested, I don't know if it was I think 2 weeks ago. I was just reading about the storyline in news articles as I was researching for this issue, and it seems like it's pretty nuts. There's a whole bunch of weird stuff going on, all these crazy elements that have been introduced in some of the Batman runs over the years, including the new one, Batmanium. Yes, they are being that stupid, and I kind of like that they're doing it. They're throwing caution to the wind. They have a big, stupid story they want to tell that's just cool more than anything else, and DC is letting them do it. I know it's usually weird for that to be in the main continuity. Usually the main stories stick to just the basics, if you will. Bad guy, big threat, world-changing event that gets reset in like a month or we forget it ever happened. And then this sort of crazy stuff gets relegated to these Elseworld stories. But screw it. Good for them. Good for them for having fun and taking chances. I might have to take a look at this series, maybe once it's cheaper digitally or if it gets collected soon. Yeah, because it sounds like it'd be fun. But I binge my comics. I don't do a ton of month-to-month reading. So I might wait for it all to come together. DC TV, HBO officially making a Watchmen pilot for a TV adaptation. That does not mean it's necessarily going to be a series we'll see. It might only mean that you get to see the pilot if you hunt it down online somewhere. But I want to know what you guys think about this one, because I think Watchmen could be done as a show just as well as I thought the movie did an okay job. I know there's some haters out there. I thought it was fine. I never saw the extended cut. But I'm curious. I mean, yeah, I don't know why I wouldn't watch it. Independent comics. Indie. There is apparently, for those of you out there who have been watching Riverdale, which I have not, there is a horror-themed drama that is going to be joining the Riverdale universe. Or rather, there's one being developed that may join the Riverdale universe. Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Also published by Archie Comics. And if you have not read, we have reviewed it on this show, the Chilling Adventures? Chilling Tales of Sabrina? Or something like that. Like, it's dark. Like, it is not the TGIF show you're thinking of in your head. It has a lot of the same elements, except for the fact that her soul was sold to Satan, and on her 13th birthday, she needs to pledge herself to him again. Like, yeah, there's some dark stuff in there. So that might actually be entertaining, except CW will get into all the relationship-y things, which pulls me out of it usually. And then, lastly, I have to mention this. And I actually have the full press release for this, so I don't know if I'll read through the whole thing. I might breeze through it for you. But I profess my love for Quantum and Woody on this show because I love stupid comics, and it is stupid, and it is oftentimes offensive, especially the original run. And I think there's a place for that in comic books of just, going crazy with what you're doing and just having fun with a stupid comic that makes fun of other comics. And so Quantum and Woody are coming back to comics in December with a new #1, finally. And they're calling this the most variant cover of all time. And they are calling this the first ever chromium, lenticular, embossed, die-cut, foil-stamped, hand-numbered, hand-stickered variant cover. And I love it. So you all know what to get me for Christmas, because apparently the comic shops only get to order one of these if they already order 250 issues of the regular #1, which I don't know if that sounds like a lot for a local comic book store, to assume that 250 customers will come in to buy the regular issue. So I expect this to be very expensive, but then again, that's the idea. All right, so I'm just going to read this. I'm going to read it because I'm excited for it. As first revealed at Comic Book Resources, Valiant sure seems proud of itself to announce the most variant cover of all time, an unholy and experimental combination of comic book history's most noted, notorious, and obnoxious cover gimmicks: chromium, lenticular, embossing, die-cutting, iridescent ink, and more onto one highly limited, meticulously crafted edition of December's Quantum and Woody 2007 #1, in order of the first issue of the all-new and untrustworthy ongoing series from rising star Daniel Kibblesmith, The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, that's fun, and explosive artist Kano from Daredevil. Valiant is combining at least 8 of the most popular, and there's an asterisk there, cover enhancements ever produced onto one cover to create a single piece de resistance that will forever enshrine the world's worst superhero team in the record books for now and all time. And here in the press release, it literally says, makes Italian kissing sound with fingers. Featuring all-new cover artwork by Valiant superstar Clayton Henry, Archer and Armstrong, and a cabal, I like that word, of top-secret special guests, the most variant cover of all time will be the first-ever embossed lenticular die-cut, individually hand-numbered, and chromium-enhanced comic book cover, all before being hand-stickered with a randomized 4th Valiant hero, and printed with 2 unique foils and iridescent 5th ink. So I guess the hand sticker is it shows Quantum and Woody on the cover and space in the middle, and they will grab a sticker of a random character from the Valiant comic book universe and slap it on the front. Let's see, here's their thing for the series. Sometimes you embrace your destiny, and sometimes you and your troublemaking adopted brother find yourself trapped in a scientific lab explosion that grants you, and there's a bunch of symbols, awesome superpowers. As a result of their accident, Eric and Woody Henderson, aka Quantum and Woody, must clang their wristbands together every 24 hours or both dissipate into nothingness, which makes superheroing pretty awkward when you're not on speaking terms at the moment. See, Eric has been keeping a pretty big secret. He knows who Woody's birth father really is and where he's been hiding all these years. Part of the draw of the original series was kind of a white man can't jump thing where Eric is black, Woody is white, and Woody is sort of adopted by Eric's family, at least in this most recent version. So they are, again, adopted brothers. Eric's dad was a super scientist. Eric is basically Batman, and Woody is super lazy and likes to lay around and play guitar and get into trouble. So it's a really entertaining mix. Oh, here we go. Plus, in honor of Quantum and Woody's upcoming overthrow of comic shops everywhere, each of the new series' first 12 issues will also feature Extreme Ultra Foil variants, a dynamic new-ish cover treatment featuring artwork by superstar artist Jeff Shaw from God Country, embossed and enhanced with authentic comics foil from the 90s. I don't know if that means they took foil from old comics to use for this. Available at the standard cover price with no minimum order qualifications for retailers. That's for these 12 variants. Relive the face-melting ratitude of the era that gloriously birthed Beavis and Butthead is crossed off, Ren and Stimpy crossed off, Quantum and Woody into comics history with the best foil covers ever produced by a major comics publisher, again an asterisk, as Valiant's Extreme Ultra Foil variants kick nostalgia in the nards. Then, don't relax, we're not through here yet. Fans and collectors can get their chase on. They're considered, I think we talked about this with Liam. A chase figure is the rare figure versus all the other ones. So a chase cover would be one. That's the variant. Your chase on with Valiant's Extreme Ultra Foil Chase variant subset. Each month, in the tradition of comics' most highly sought-after oddities and error editions, Valiant will produce a single, strictly limited run variant of Jeff Shaw's Extreme Ultra Foil artwork with a rare, specialized, and supremely wacky 90s foil. With great power comes great sibling rivalry. On December 20th, you'll believe 2 men and 1 goat can split a 1-bedroom apartment and still be a credible threat to evil and injustice everywhere. When Quantum and Woody 2017, number 1 makes headlines and takes names with spinner rack shattering melee of covers from Comics All-Star, yada, 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 yada. Every gimmick known to man. Okay. So the first issue is going to have every variant in one, and then the first 12 issues, assuming the series makes it that long, will have Extreme Ultra Foil variants, and in those, Extreme Ultra Foil Chase variants with wacky 90s foil. So I love that they're being stupid with it. I am not the kind of guy that's going to have to run out and grab all the foil covers, but I'm going to have a comic shop opening right around the corner, so I just might. All right, I have one other commercial. I'm going to try this out. I feel like I'm never going to do 2 commercial breaks again, but I'm going to do it this time. So we'll be right back.
Hey everyone, I'm Katie.
And I'm Chelsea, and we're the hosts of the podcast
Tea Time with Katie and Chelsea.
We are two best friends who love pop culture. We try to have a female perspective on things, but we really just talk about anything we like. What are some recent topics we've done, Katie?
Well, we've talked about girl power songs, Wonder Woman, Veronica Mars, young adult fiction novels, San Diego Comic-Con, and so much more. So grab your cup of tea or whatever your drink of choice is and download our podcast on iTunes or Stitcher and start listening today.
And we're back. I have no idea which commercials I'm putting in which commercial breaks. So, yay, Geek to Geek Podcast Network. All right, let's get into the topic of the week. And here's what I want to talk about this week. I read a ton of comics. Like I made time to both watch a bunch of The Walking Dead and clear season 7 and catch up on some of my comic book reading and just finish several things that I had read a few pages of but hadn't finished yet. So let's just go in no particular order. Defender, Volume 3. This is still a very interesting comic book. I love the pencils are good. And then the color approach is like this watercolor sort of thing, I feel like is how they're coloring it. So it gives it sort of its own unique look. The plot, as we've said before on the show, it's a little boy robot trying to find his way. And then it ties into these massive robots that showed up and attacked people like 15 years ago or 17 years before this story takes place. And it's really good. This volume in particular focuses more on sort of the other characters besides the boy robot. He gets a little bit, but then we follow the human boy that he was originally paired up with, who's now in like his 30s, making a living killing rogue robots that try to find their own independence. And it gives a backstory to some of the other side characters that we have in this book as well. I suggested this one previously for Beej, for Professor Beej, BJ, over on the Geek to Geek podcast and Geek Fitness Health Hacks. But I do think anybody else could enjoy this. I think Void would enjoy it as well. If not for the art, I think he would also like the story and sort of the little ins and outs and interesting tweaks that happen to the story. Is tweaks really the right word? The twists and turns. Next up is Giant Days Volume 4, which I believe I also suggested on Slack for Chelsea of Tea Time with Katie and Chelsea. I'm still enjoying this book a lot. It's very like Scott Pilgrim in a lot of ways, but it is also its own thing. 3 girls, they're best friends at university, because it's not here in the United States. They are about to get ready for their second year of college, and it sort of goes around them convincing the one friend who's sort of has this goth Lolita thing going on to go back to college with them. And because she said she wasn't going back, that she was going to quit going to college. She gets convinced to go back, but her parents cut her off, so she no longer has money and needs to figure out how to get a job and that sort of thing. And they have to try and find a place to live for their second year, and then they have no money, and one of them tries to go about dating and getting over an ex-boyfriend. It's just a bunch of kooky fun, and that's by Boombox, is the comic company, who really seems to be kind of killing it, because they're also the ones that put out Lumberjanes, and I think that's it. I'm pretty sure Image does Paper Girls. For some reason, I thought Boombox did Paper Girls, but off the top of my head, I don't think so. But I like this comic book. I talk about a lot about comics that I like that have like really good storylines, and then comics that I think are just fun to sit and read. Giant Days is a comic that's fun to sit and read. It's easy to clear a volume in one sitting, and it's an entertaining read. So I suggest that. On the flip side of that is Monstress. I did finish Volume 2. Still a good read. I'm still mostly drawn just because I think the art is gorgeous, but the world they've built is also very cool. I love this idea of these demons who were in this other dimension or pushed to this other dimension. And again, it's very anime-y with like half animal people, and a lot of that sort of out of my purview, I guess we would say. It's not really in my wheelhouse, but I still really like it. And the art is beautiful, and it's well written. So, yay. I look forward to seeing Volume 3. Ex Machina Volume 1. Dr. Ray and I talked about this when we did our Brian K. Vaughan episode. He loaned me the first 2 volumes, and I finished up the first one yesterday. It is about the world's only superhuman who can talk, and I'm doing finger quotes that you can't see, to machines and get them to do what he wants. For example, in the opening pages, somebody pulls out a semi-automatic handgun and points it at him, and he tells it to jam, and so he's safe from being shot by that gun. This is a man who tried to be a superhero for a while and built a suit and a jetpack and tried to do that thing, but it didn't work out so well, though he did stop one of the two towers from coming down on 9/11. He stopped one of the planes, is sort of the big twist they reveal after 2 issues, maybe the end of the first issue, just to introduce you to this world and get you interested. And now he is mayor of New York City. And so he's dealing with issues a mayor would have to deal with, controversial art in a museum, getting the snowplows out on time. And then there's a threat where somebody seems to be killing these snowplow drivers, and they don't know if it's somebody that's trying to draw the mayor out as his old costumed identity. Again, it's written by Brian K. Vaughan. He's a good writer. He does a really good job of making his characters feel very fleshed out without giving them a ton of backstory, I guess. You feel like you know his characters pretty well right off the bat. And like I said, Ray loaned me Volume 2, so that is what I believe I'm going to start reading tonight. Lastly, The Walking Dead Season 7. I consider giving this thing its own episode, but that would mean I would have to sit down and write a ton of notes, where here I just wrote myself some brief notes, a brief blurb. So that's what you get. I binged it. I binged it this week. I had it on while I was cleaning. I had it on while I do dishes. If I was doing some light editing where the notes were written down for me and I wasn't actually doing a ton of reading or writing of new content, I had it on in the background. So I liked it. It felt like it was moving along at a decent clip. It never felt like this season stalled out like a lot of previous seasons do. I miss still the fact that Negan is not quite his comic book counterpart who drops the F-bomb every single time he opens his mouth. But I think Jeffrey Dean Morgan does a pretty good job of capturing the character. And just like in the comic book, I like how they slowly peel back the layers of the character of Negan. So you can see he's not just this generic evil guy he seems when he's like, he shows up, I'm in charge, he kills a couple members of the main cast, so now we know he's a threat, as they actually peel back the layers of him being this, he's not a good person, like that's clear immediately, but he has lines that he won't cross. He doesn't actually, well, he seems to enjoy killing people, but like he understands that he has to put on an immediate show of force in order to convince people that they have to follow him and do what he says. And now he has multiple settlements of human survivors working for him who are scavenging materials so they can all bring it into a central place and then distribute based on a point system where you do work to get points that you trade for goods and for food, you know, just like you would with money. So like there's more to the character, and also the idea that he's just, in the comics especially, Negan is Negan. He is exactly what you see of him. Like I said, there's layers, and I know that seems contradictory, but the way that he speaks, he says exactly what he thinks. So if he thinks you did something badass, even if it was try to kill him, he will actually applaud you for it because, wow, that was really badass, you know, that kind of thing. So there were some enjoyable moments, obviously a lot of emotional stuff in there as well, because we lose other main characters as the season goes along. And there's those little moments of hope that they throw in there in the middle, which is also really nice. It's sad that I have to wait a whole year because I have to wait for season 8 to air and then go on whatever streaming service, we'll assume Netflix again. But that's okay because I got to jumpstart my October Halloween viewing stuff by doing Fear the Walking Dead, followed by The Walking Dead. So I got a bunch of zombies in me. So now I am happy to kick in and start watching Halloween stuff, which brings us to pull list. I already said I'm going to be reading volume 2 of Ex Machina because I got that loan from Ray. The other thing that I'm going to read is my fifth pick from the Hoopla app for the month of September was Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? The book that was the basis for the Blade Runner film. There is a comic adaptation of the book, so I plan on diving into that at some point. For everybody else, I suggest anything that I suggested, or reviewed rather, this issue. Go ahead and pick it up because I, more than anything in the world, as far as a comic book fan is I like having other people that read the same comics as I do so that I can talk to them about it. And I mean that. I never had that as a comic book geek. And even now, my friends that read comics usually aren't reading the same things I am when I'm reading. Like here, Dr. Ray loaned me some stuff. I loan Liam stuff from time to time that he refuses to read. And so there's suggestions that go back and forth. But it's so much fun because it's like watching Game of Thrones, and episode to episode, you're talking to one another about it. Please go and take a look at some of the things I suggested. I really want to know what you think. And if you're reading dark metal, let me know how that is too, because you might just convince me to go and try and pick up individual issues, but I doubt it. My comic boxes are pretty much full, and it takes a lot for me to add individual issues to them. As far as viewing stuff, I might finally go and watch The Tick, but as always, no promises because it's on Amazon, so I think I have that on my smart TV, but I got to figure that out. And then, because October is upon us, the thing I was actually, I said this in the wrong order. This is the thing I should have said first when we went into the poll list. I'm thinking I'm diving into the horror movie stuff. This upcoming weekend, I am volunteering for opening night at the haunted house, The Circle of Ash, in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, or near Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And I was going to do it Friday and Saturday night, so do almost the whole opening weekend. But there is a screening of the 1922 Nosferatu film, which I really enjoy because I think it still holds up. And they're doing it here in the Twin Cities with live music. I gave in and I bought a ticket to that, so I'm going to come back up early. But I'm diving deep into October. Like, you better believe this week I'm putting up my Halloween decorations. And so if there is a horror-themed show on Netflix or Hulu that you think I should be watching, let me know. I've watched Scream, the MTV Scream. I've seen the 2 seasons, I think, is what they have there. And that's pretty good. Yeah, as usually I do horror movies or Halloween, spooky-themed, whatever movies throughout the month. But if there's a TV show or something I should check out, I am all down to do that because that means shorter viewing experiences. So let me know. Because we're everywhere. Let's move into the end of the show, and I'll tell you all about that with a That's It for This Week. Now. I usually don't sing things. That was different. That was like a Jean Ralphio. That's it for this week. Anyway, star ratings and reviews on iTunes or wherever you listen is awesome. Head over to iTunes, search for the Comic Book Podcast as though you've never heard of it, and then that lets you go and write a review. We are part of a network, the Geek to Geek Podcast Network. Please go and listen to all of our shows. You can find us collectively on Facebook at GeektoGeekCast.com. On Reddit, we have a subreddit, also Geek to Geekcast, and on Slack. So I believe that is Slack.geektogeekcast.com is sort of the hidden invite link. Go there and you can join us on Slack. We have a different channel for every single show, and it's like being in a big group chat with everybody else and all of your best friends because we're all friends here. Honestly, there's not a ton of people there, but the people who are there are awesome. Go join them and join us. As far as this show, you can email us at thecomicboxpodcast@gmail.com, or more commonly, just hit us up on Twitter. We are on Twitter at ComicBoxCast. I am personally on Twitter at Nobi. Liam's stuff will be in the show notes. We'll see if we can get him back next week. Like I keep saying, October is that month where I like to go out and do things a lot and get my Halloweens on all month. So that means, we're potentially not going to be able to hook up to record every single week, but I'm going to do my absolute best to get Liam back in here. We can see what he has been up to lately. And then if you guys remember, I did a Halloween episode last year that was a little different. I think I just talked about the history of horror in comic books, but I did it differently. I read it in a low voice and whatever. And so, I don't know, maybe I'll do something like that. Maybe I'll even do some original piano music for you guys and make it sound like an episode of Lore or something. I have no idea. So keep an eye out for that. Keep listening and read more comics. I'm going to close the comic box. This has been issue 67, and I will see you guys next week with a ba-da-bow, boop-bop-doo, da-ba-da-da-ba-da-bow, da-da-ba-doo, The comic books. I finally read some comics a lot, and I wanted to talk about them. And if you're listening, happy birthday, Jack.